everyone, and welcome to another 64 Kings opening tutorials video. In this video we will be looking at a vicious opening called the England Gambit to crush d4 very quickly. So without further ado, let's jump straight in to the video. First up, I'm going to show you two of my favourite England Gambit traps, and then after that I'm going to show you what to do if white doesn't fall for those traps. And then after that, what we're going to do is we're going to look at all the different possibilities and variations of the England Gambit, so you know everything before going to play your first game with this lovely opening. So without further ado, let's look at the first trap. It starts off with the normal moves d4 and e5. This is called the England Gambit, and after they accept our gambit, we are going to play knight c6, adding an attacker to the e5 pawn. And after they defend with knight f3, we will add another attacker again with queen e7. And after they play bishop f4, adding another defender, we're going to play the beautiful move queen b4 check, a triple fork on the pawn on b2, the king on e1, and also the bishop on f4 most importantly. And after they go bishop d2, saving their bishop and also blocking the check, we're going to take on b2, threatening the rook. And here white's going to try and be clever by preventing us from taking their rook on a1 by playing the move bishop c3, just like so. And after this, we're going to play the marvellous move bishop b4, pinning the bishop to its own king on e1 from c3, and this also renews the threat on a1 because our queen cannot be captured because of the pin. And after this, white's going to try and save their bishop with queen d2, and after this we simply take their bishop, and after they recapture back thinking everything's fine, we will surprise them with a beautiful queen c1 checkmate in 8 moves. The second trap comes out with the same line, but just a little bit of a different variation. Obviously, otherwise it would be the same trap, of course. So it starts off with these same moves, obviously in the England Gambit main line, and then we get to this position, where instead of putting its bishop on d2, white decides to put their queen on d2, because that not only blocks the check, but it also defends the bishop on f4. And after this, we will proceed by taking on b2, attacking the rook, and after this, white, instead of playing something like bishop c3 like they did last time trying to attack our queen and prevent us from taking the rook, white is now going to play queen c3 just like this. And remember what we did last time, we played bishop b4, pinning the bishop to the king so he couldn't take our queen. But here we're going to play bishop b4, pinning the queen to the king to stop our queen from being captured, and just like that, we get up a queen because the only thing white can do is capture our bishop, and we have a queen for a piece, and we are totally winning. You might be wondering what to do if white doesn't fall into those two traps in the knight c3 line, so let's look at it. It starts off with obviously the same moves as before, with d4, e5, and then all these continuations and up to queen b4, and then we take on b2. Now here the best move for white is actually to play the move knight c3, and the point of knight c3 is to try and get their rook to b1 to sort of kick out our queen. And after knight c3, we're always going to play the lovely move bishop b4, like so. And then after rook b1, we have to remember the move queen takes c3. Now this is if you want to be extra risky. I'm going to show you another line later on with queen a3, which is slightly less risky of course because it doesn't sack a queen, and then you can also use that or this depending on what you prefer to play like. So here we're going to sack our queen on c3, and they're going to capture back, and then we're going to capture back with our bishop of course, giving check. And now here white can either block with their queen or the knight. Obviously if they block with their queen, we simply take the queen, that goes without saying. So here they're going to block with their knight on d2, and we're going to capture the pawn on e5. Now after this, so many different variations are possible. There could be loads of things. They could play e4, they could play knight f3, they could play g3, they could play literally anything. And there's many different things, but the main idea here is that we're going to get our knights out and we're simply going to castle, and it is going to look something a bit like this. We're going to have 2 active knights, we're going to have a very active bishop in the center of the board, and the whole aim is we're going to try and go for d5 and d6 and try and get our c8 bishop into the game a bit more. That is the one circled of course, and then we're going to try and get our rooks into the center of the board and start to kick out his bishop and make life very difficult for white here. And here it is only actually +2 for white here, so even though we are down a queen, it is actually a lot better than you may think. So now let's go into the other variation of this line, which I'm going to show you guys, and then see which one you guys prefer and play that in your games. The second variation we'll be looking at is slightly less risky and also involves a trap which could actually win you the game with checkmate. So as we said earlier, it is the move Queen A3. Now obviously this does not sack a queen straight away, so some of you may already prefer this, and that is great. So after this, the best move for white is to play the move Knight D5. This attacks the bishop on b4 and also threatens a fork on c7. And here we must remember the move Bishop A5, just like this, as this defends the fork on c7 and also takes the bishop out of the knight's harm's way. So that's very, very good. And here the best move for white is to play the move Rook B5. This attacks the bishop and also renews the threat on c7 with the fork, and so here we will relieve all the tension with bishop takes d2, just like this, and after they capture back, we will play the move King d8, with the purpose of stopping any forks on c7. The best move after this for white is to play Queen g5 check, and as you can see here, it is check on our king, and it also attacks the pawn on g7. And after this, we are going to play the move f6, blocking the queen on g5's check. And here white has two options. First of all, let's look at whether they take on g7 or not. So here, let's see if they take on g7 what happens. So here if they decide to take on g7 and also threaten to capture on f6 and also threaten to capture our rook on h8, we can actually play the surprise checkmate, Queen c1 there. And that is a very, very nice trap which can win you the game, and it has happened multiple times on Lichess's database. So that is one of the traps you can play. So now let's look at e takes f6, a different variation of this. If they spot the incoming checkmate on c1, however, they will decide to capture with their pawn on f6. And after this, it is very, very important that we capture back with our own g-pawn, otherwise we may be running into certain forks on our king and our rook on h8 and d8. And after this, white has many, many different options. One of them would be Queen f4, and the main idea here is just to play d6, get our bishops out and try and develop and get our rooks to the center and have a nice game. Also keeping the fact that white has to keep their queen defending c1, otherwise we can always surprise them with a lovely Queen c1 checkmate. Now we're going to be looking at when white takes, and then we play Knight c6, and then after the move Bishop f4. Here, there are many things we can do, but I recommend the move f6, gambiting a pawn. Here, white has two options. First of all, let's look if they capture on f6 with their pawn, just like this. After this, the best move is Queen f6, as it attacks the pawn on b2 and also threatens the bishop on f4. Now after this, white's best move is Queen c1, defending both of these two things, and here we have many, many different options such as bishop c5, d5, and then maybe even bishop f5 in the future. So this is something which the game could look like after this: d5, e3, bishop f5. And after this, we have many, many different options such as long castling or even knight b4 going for a fork on c2. Now let's have a little look at when they defend their pawn with knight f3. The second option white has here is to play the move knight f3 like this, reinforcing their pawn on e5. After this, we can play the crazy looking move g5, attacking their bishop. And after their only real move, bishop g3, also their best move, we will play g4, threatening the knight again. And this is a very, very nice variation and can also be very, very fun to play, of course, as there are many, many different threats you can come up with. And after the main move, knight d4, we will simply capture back on e5, winning back the pawn. And after they take on knight c6, we will be very, very careful with taking back with our c-pawn. And the reason we do this is try and play d5 in the center. This builds up our center and also makes our position a lot nicer. And after the move bishop takes e5, we will play knight f6, as it is reinforced by the queen on d8. And after this, play looks a bit like bishop g7 and then castling, and then overall getting your white squared bishop into the game as well. In summary, against bishop f4, you just have to play nice developing moves and pick your variation and play chess and hopefully win. It is not as complicated as playing in the main line, so just sort of go with your guts and play nice moves. Now, after bishop f4, we're going to be looking at what happens when white does nothing. By nothing, I mean a move like knight c3. After this, we can simply just capture the pawn back on e5, and after knight d5, it is very, very important that we take the knight on f3 before retreating back to d8, otherwise we will lose our knight on e5 very quickly. And after takes, we will simply drop back to d8 and everything is fine and the position is relatively equal. Also, you may be thinking, after something like e4, what happens? We will simply just capture back on e5 like this, and we have very nice development with knight f6 and bishop c5. If you're wondering why it is very important that we take the knight on f3 before dropping back to d8, it is simply because of this. If we drop back to d8 straight away, they will capture our knight on e5 and be up a piece. So always good to remember to take on f3 before dropping back to d8 in this line. And to finish off the video, the trap you guys have all been waiting for. A trap that has been played over 500,000 times and a trap that wins a queen in such a cool way. Let's look at it. It starts off with d4, e5, takes, and here instead of playing the usual knight c6, we will play bishop c5 threatening f2, and after they play knight f3 we will play d6 sacrificing a pawn, and after they take we will sacrifice a knight on e7, and if they capture our knight you can see that our queen is facing their queen and there is a weak pawn on f2, and if you put those two pieces together we will take on f2 and their only move is to capture back, and we will take on d1 and be up a queen very nicely. And that is how you can master the England Gambit very quickly. A beautiful vicious opening filled with amazing traps. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to smash that subscribe button to not miss any future videos. See you in the next video. Bye bye.